Good morning. Welcome to the Village Voice. Today we have special guest Sean Boyle with us today. Uriah, come on up.
Mr. Boyle, I'm going to ask you a question.
I'm ready.
Okay, so what's the purpose for the Children's Service Council?
Sure. First of all, thank you for having me. I like how you just got right to the questions. I like that. We get right down to the business. The Children's Services Council does 5 things in the community. We provide funding and resources so that we can make sure every baby's a healthy baby. We can stop child abuse before it happens. We can keep kids off the streets, keep them in school, and off drugs, alcohol, and other risky behaviors that teens sometimes do.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Next up we have Alexis.
How you doing?
I want to ask you a question. Is it sometimes hard being a instructional director?
Yeah, it can be. You know, as the executive director, I'm responsible for executing the strategic plan, making sure that the budget's good, managing the staff, but more importantly, my job is to make sure that our efforts are impacting the community. So I'm not going to lie, there's some days when I come home after reading something tragic that happened in our community or maybe seeing something that we didn't want to see, and I sometimes wonder, like, you know, is this effort worth it? But then on most days, I see all the great things that are happening, not unlike what's happening right now, and I love my job. But there are some tough times, definitely.
Thank you.
Next up we have Naisha.
Mr. Sean.
How you doing?
Mr. Sean, if I wanted to do what you're doing now, what would I have to do?
Okay, first of all, you have to be older. No, just kidding. Well, I would first, you have to graduate high school, and then you probably have to get a college degree, preferably in something related to working in the community. So, for example, maybe psychology, sociology, social work, or even if you just graduated with a degree in business, but you had some experience in helping out the community, not unlike what you're doing right here, then you could work for the Children's Services Council. I look for, when we hire people, which we don't do very often because our lowest 10-year person has been there 3 years. Our highest has been there 20 years. I look for somebody who has a heart for the community, is able to communicate with all types of people. You know, that's one of the things that when you go through high school and college, and that's why this program is so great, is what's going to make you successful in life isn't necessarily the fine details that you're going to learn in school. I'm not saying it's not important, but it's how you interact with people and how you're able to think. And the ability to be able to do what you're doing right now, and what you're doing right now is so huge, and no matter what you choose to do, but I look for people who can interact with all types of people and people that are team players.
Okay.
And if you can, go to graduate school too. Then we'll work out a succession plan. You can take over my job.
Next up we have Alexis.
Mr. Sean, my question is, how long and how did the Children's Service Council come together?
How long, or when did we come together,
Yes.
and how long? The Children's Services Councils are enabled by state statute, which basically says that the state says a community can establish a Children's Services Council if they do 2 things. One, they have to get the county commission to agree to put it on the ballot. That's step number 1. And 2, the community has to vote to establish a Children's Services Council. And what we are is we're a dedicated funding resource for programs not unlike this one right here, after school programs and those 5 things that I mentioned. So in 1990, this community voted to whether or not they wanted to establish a Children's Services Council. So in 1990, 56% of the residents said yes. So at that time, we became one of only 7 Children's Services Councils that exist in the state of Florida, and there's only 8 currently. So in 1990, we were established. Then in 2014, we were asked to ask the community again, do you want to continue the Children's Services Council? Again, a dedicated funding resource for children programs. And at that time, in 2014, 86% of the people said yes. So we've been around since 1990.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Next up we have Veslu.
And is there a time where I get to ask questions in too?
Yes.
I'm putting you on the spot.
Mr. Sean Boyle, what were some sacrifices that you made to become executive director? of children's services?
Wow, had I known you were going to ask that question, I could have brought my wife, my kids here. Probably the biggest sacrifice is time. I'll be honest with you. I have two children, 16 and 19, and being the executive director, being in that role, sometimes it's not an 8 to 5, 9 to 5 job. For example, just last night I didn't get home until 9 o'clock, so I had like an hour window to spend with my kids. So there are days where the job takes me away from my family, and that's important because, just as much as I work with kids and try to make sure that you have opportunities, I have a responsibility because I'm a father to my own kids. So sometimes that's the sacrifice. And then, I'm in social service. I work to better the community. I don't make iPhones. So there's a money difference there too. I don't get paid as much as business people do, which is fine because when I go to bed at night, I can say, look what's happening in the community, and I have a role in that. And to me, that's more important than making the money. Not saying I don't get paid to do what I do. I'm not saying that.
Next up, we have Dontravius.
I don't think he was aware you were going to call on him.
My question is, what is exactly the round table?
What is the round table?
Yeah, the executive round table.
The round table, they dropped the word executive, by the way. They just now go by round table. The round table, and I have the privilege of getting ready to finish up. I've been the chair of that entity for the last 2 years, or going on 2 years. The round table basically brings together everybody that can have an impact on kids, whether it be through funding or policy decisions, and we work together to address community issues that affect kids and try to cut through all the red tape to make it happen. So for example, who sits on the round table is myself, the United Way, who funds children's programs, the sheriff, the fire chief, Department of Juvenile Justice, county commissioners, all the people that can make things happen. And we build a strategy, it's a big strategic plan to make sure that what we need to focus on, everybody, instead of me doing my own thing and then everybody, United Way doing their own thing, we work together as one to make sure that we have the greatest impact.
So that was my question.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Malcolm.
Surprise.
How you doing, sir?
Good, how are you?
My question to you is, how what you do affect the community?
Sure, that's a good question. So, when you, at the simplest level, what we do is we provide resources. So, for example, we provide funding and direction to 50 programs in St. Lucie County, 50 nonprofits that are working with children from 0 to 18. So at its simplest form, we provide them the money and the resources to exist. So for example, anybody heard of the Avenue D Boys and Girls Choir?
Yeah.
Right. So our funding accounts for 85 to 90% of their operating budget. So without us, they wouldn't be able to provide staffing to support that program. So a lot of programs do that. Now that's at its simplest form, we provide money. More importantly to that, we are working with programs like what's happening here. We're working with the community to find out not only what program, but what's the best program to bring, what's the emerging need that we need to address to make sure that there are opportunities for success, not only for the children, but the parents as well. Thank you.
Next up, we have Thomas.
Good, how are you doing?
Good. Why do you like this job?
Why do I like this job? Well, I'm glad you assumed that I like the job, and I do like that. Because there's some days I'm like, man, no, I do like the job. When I was trying to determine what I wanted to do with my life, and you hear, you guys won't hear this, but the adults in the room know, I'm still trying to figure out what I'm going to do with my life. You run into people all that time, like when I grow up, even though they're 30, 40 years old, they're like figuring out what I'm going to do with my life. I know what I'm going to do with my life because I'm doing it. Because I made a decision early. I thought I wanted to work in business. I had some mentors that told me, look, the most important thing to do with your career is to make money, and that is important. Obviously, you need money to clothing and to afford what you want to do in your life. But more importantly to that is, I had a revelation when I was fortunate enough to go to college. Was I went to a rather large university, worked my way through it. I worked in the mall and made pizzas, and I started taking business classes because I thought, hey, I want to pursue money, right? What I noticed when I got into business classes, I was just a number. I wasn't Sean Boyle. They didn't address me as Sean. I was really referred to as my social security number. I was literally just a number. And then all I studied was numbers. And I remember thinking, at the end of the day, I don't want to work with numbers. I don't want to be the person that is a single number to a corporation to make money, which is another number, to make profit, which is another. I want to know that I'm doing something with my life. So about half the way through college, I realized this isn't what I want to do. So I started studying psychology and social work, and I realized, look, I want to work with people. I want to make a difference. I want to know that when I go to bed at the end of the night, I've had some type of positive impact, either directly with the child that I'm working with or with the community at large. So I kind of flipped that switch early on. And don't get me wrong, I mean, I'm not living out of my car. I'm making money to survive, but I chose my career and I like what I do because I get to do stuff like this. And I get to see this happening. I get to see all the great things that are happening, and I see the struggles, and I get to brainstorm and figure out how we can address it. I don't even remember what you asked, but that's my answer.
Thank you. Next up, we have Jacob.
Oh man, I got to spend time with this guy on the radio program. He's not going to ask me a softball question.
Sorry, I'm a little too tall for this mic stand. Mr. Boyle, when in your life did you realize you wanted to work with people?
When? Well, it kind of goes back to what I just said, or was just talking about. I think I was, let me do the math, I want to say I was about 21 years of age. And what I did was I switched from business to psychology and sociology. And then when I graduated college, I'm going to reveal, anybody that's good with math, I'm going to start revealing how old I am. When I graduated college in 91, we were in a recession then, so there were no jobs. So when I graduated, I did landscaping. I just needed to make money to get by. So I did some landscaping, and I got a job with the Department of Children. I was living in Indianapolis at the time. I got a job in Elkhart, Indiana, which is right on the Indiana-Michigan border. And I became a child abuse investigator, and that really opened my eyes because growing up I didn't have an easy life. I mean, there were economic struggles, but I really got to learn a lot about family dynamics investigating child abuse. So I did that for a couple years, but I knew that's not what I wanted to do because I took a lot of it home with me. I left after 2 years because honestly I was getting burnt out. Then I went to go work for a university. You're going to cut me off if I get too long-winded, right? You're the host, man. I worked at a university, and I got to work with adults that were deciding, 30, 40 years of old. They kind of figured out what they wanted to do, and they wanted to work with people, so I would counsel them on that. And that job was terrible. The pay was terrible. I was living in Chicago, getting paid next to nothing. But the great thing about it is I got to go to graduate school for free. So I worked there long enough to get my degree, and I left. But when I got here, I liked here because I get bored easy. Some may call it ADD. I get bored easy. And what I like about this is there's always different things happening. So whether it be going to an after-school program, summer program like this, or working with infants, I can have an opportunity to work on it all. And I am thankful. There are days when I'm like, man, I'm just not happy today. But overall, I'm doing what I think was meant for me to do.
Thank you.
You can tell I've had some coffee, right? This is,
Yeah.
interview fueled by coffee.
Last question. I hear you like basketball.
I think that's all.
I do like basketball. One of your producers here, he probably won't tell the story. He'll, we play against each other in the old man's basketball league. That's what I call it, the old man basketball league. Oh, come on, man. I'm counting me in that. It's a 30 and over basketball league. We're advocating for 40 and over basketball league. He'll score 20 points on me, but I'll block his shot once or twice. But yes, I am a huge. If I could, and if my body would allow me to do it, I would. And if I had enough time in the day, I would play basketball every single day. I'm a basketball junkie. I watch during NBA and college basketball season, I literally probably watch a basketball game a night.
But that's all for the show today. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me. It was fun.
It was fun having you too.